Just so you know, because we're still in quarantine here in New York, I wasn't able to go out and get my hair permed like George had it on this album. With that being said, let's begin. This is the 6th George Harrison solo album since the breakup of the Beatles, and it's simply titled George Harrison. I guess in the same way that the White Album is technically just called The Beatles. And interesting enough, there's an outtake from the White Album sessions that made it to this record, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I generally refer to this as the Harrison 79 album, because that's when it came out, 1979. Yeah, okay, thanks Billy, we got it. Out of all the albums I've reviewed so far, this is the one I've had the hardest time deciding a rating for. While I do like it, my first spin of the record was very underwhelming. The only song I really knew was the single, Blow Away, written about a leak in George's roof that really bummed him out for some reason. Man, talk about first world problems. But somehow he turned this slice of domestic life into a very optimistic song, not unlike Here Comes the Sun, and as such, it's a favorite of mine. Great slide playing, a real catchy melody, definitely in good company with singles like Gimme Love or this song. A little side note, his image in this video is actually how I modeled my look for the fictional 1980 reunion in the Let It Be tour. A lot had happened between albums. For one thing, his son Danny was born in 1978, and he married Olivia shortly afterwards.
My lifestyle's different. I enjoy, going home and being with the family.
He appeared in Eric Idle's Beatles spoof film, The Ruddles' All You Need Is Cash.
So the stories of the theft, they're not true also?
No, they're greatly exaggerated, greatly exaggerated.
And the year before, George had taken some time off to travel with the Formula One racing team.
I liked it since I was a kid. I managed to get to know all the, the backroom sort of stuff.
George wrote a great song about motor racing called Faster. This is it. This is the commercial for George Harrison.
Indeed, Faster was dedicated to his F1 friends, including Jackie Stewart, who appeared in the video, and it's a great tune at that. As the opener to side 2, and given the inner sleeve art, you can kinda tell that this was the song he was most interested in. I think the title of the album was even going to be called Faster, which would have been an odd title considering this is a pretty mellow album, and honestly, that's one of my biggest issues with it. A lot of the songs George wrote while visiting Hawaii in early '78, which makes sense when you listen to some of them. One of these songs is the first track, Love Comes to Everyone, and I think it's a good opening. A little mellow, a bit synth-heavy at times, but very catchy. Eric Clapton is even back to play the opening guitar line. Side note, Eric married Patty Boyd that same year, and George was cool enough to attend the wedding. He even performed a semi-Beatles reunion with Paul and Ringo, with Eric sitting in. Supposedly they performed Sgt. Pepper together. God, I would love to hear that performance. Among other performers on this record, we got Willie Weeks and Andy Newmark as the rhythm section again. Stevie Winwood plays keyboards, including that nifty solo on the first song, and sings backups. It was also George's first collaboration with percussionist Ray Cooper, who has got to be one of the most visually entertaining percussionists ever. Now, unfortunately, following Love Comes to Everyone, the album starts to let me down. Not Guilty was the leftover tune from the White Album sessions, which might have worked well given its heavy production. Here, it sounds like it should be played in a coffee shop.
I'm really sorry that you've been misled, but like you heard me say, not guilty.
Then we've got Here Comes the Moon, also written in Hawaii, and you're probably immediately thinking it's another one of those sequel songs, this time to Here Comes the Sun. And it definitely pales in comparison. It's not quite as obvious as This Guitar Can't Keep From Crying, but it's also not that memorable. Honestly, the album kinda drags until it finally picks up with Blow Away, which even loses a bit of its magic in the playing order. I do really like Dark Sweet Lady, a gentle tune written for his wife Olivia, and best captures that relaxing Hawaiian vibe.
My dark sweet lady.
A lot of fans really like Your Love Is Forever, and yeah, it's a nice tune. Again, I think it loses its appeal in the playing order, and the rest of the album kinda gets bogged down, even with the upbeat collaboration with Gary Wright, If You Believe, which admittedly includes some signature Harrison slide parts. If it feels like I'm kinda all over the place with this album, it's because I am. There is admittedly some good writing on this album, it's just a bit too mellow for my tastes, and not in the same profound way as Material World. I'm on the fence of recommending this album, so let's review the good tunes. The essential track is Blow Away, for me one of George's best singles. Other standout tracks are Faster, with the enjoyable race car driver story, the catchy opening Love Comes to Everyone, and the beautiful love ballad Dark Sweet Lady. All solid tracks. The rest just don't do that much for me. Leading up to this review, I was planning on giving it a spotted fish, which means I would still recommend streaming the album, just not owning on vinyl. And if you're wondering why I own it on vinyl if I don't give it a goldfish, well, to be honest, I actually got it in a bundle with a whole bunch of other albums. But I decided to ask my guitar player, Todd Meredith, from my original project and the Something Show, what his thoughts were on the album. And he had a very positive reaction to it.
I was pleasantly surprised by this album. I personally love Rubber Soul. I like that acoustic-y sound, that singer-songwriter-y sound, and I think the George Harrison self-titled album really lends itself to that. All the tunes are very catchy, but none of them are too similar also. It's a pretty eclectic mix of songs here. Tracks 5 through 7, I think, are the most essential part of the album. My favorite tune was Dark Sweet Lady, and I definitely recommend checking that tune out, if nothing else, off of this album. My biggest complaint is I would probably like to switch the track order. Your Love Is Forever would have been a nice way to end the album, I think. I've been listening to a lot of depressing stuff of late. This was kind of a very nice palate cleanser. There's a lot of optimism, there's a lot of positivity. It was something that I really needed to listen to today personally.
So I decided to give Harrison 79 one more spin on vinyl. And surprisingly, I did find myself enjoying it more. I stand by my original criticisms of some songs, and especially the playing order, but maybe it is because of the current state of the world that the relaxed vibe and optimism of the record is much more welcomed. So I'm gonna go ahead and give Harrison 79 a goldfish, keeping in mind that you should be in the right frame of mind for a relaxed, mellow listening experience. But we're closing the books on the 70s, and we're about to dive into George Harrison's 80s albums! Oh God.